Welcome to the Irish NFL Show's Week 15 live recap show in association with QuinnBet. Well, to paraphrase Scott Hansen's famous line from Red Zone, it was a weekend where wins became losses and losses became wins. It was also a weekend of action where some teams suffered the agony of losing players vital to their playoff and even potentially their Super Bowl aspirations. Good evening to all of you watching us live. The time of recording, we're just a couple of hours away from the Monday Night Football game between the Steelers and Dolphins. That, of course, has both playoff implications and, from a Steelers perspective, divisional championship implications. Brian O'Leary and Kieran O'Donovan here with me this evening, Conor Brophy, to look back at all that Week 15 action. And we start with some home interest, Kieran, where Charlie Smyth kicked the winning field goal for the New Orleans Saints. Great to see an Irish player playing at the highest level in the NFL, walking away, winning the game for the Saints, an upset win for them over the Panthers, and getting a game ball from Saints coach Kellen Moore. This isn't something that we're excited about, it's something that his team was excited about, and great to see that recognition from the highest levels within the organizations for what Charlie Smyth is doing there for the Saints.
Yeah, it's absolutely unbelievable. The dream journey continues for Charlie Smyth, and we spoke about how his character has influenced how his teammates see him last week, and that was evident in spades again last night. And that viral video from the locker room was doing the rounds. I've got friends who have absolutely no interest in the NFL texted me all day long. The same clip is just it's floating around and around, and you see Chris Olave and all those stars on the Saints team absolutely surrounding him, shouting his name. He's not just some no-name guy in there. He's beloved by his teammates, and it's fantastic to see. And I spoke to Kieran, during the instant reaction last night, and for whatever the Saints have left to play for, and you might say that they don't have much to play for over the next 3 games. Every kick for Charlie Smyth last night was an audition, and he passed with flying colours. I mean, he was 4 out of 4, and he was iced. He was iced at one point, but also there was a kick that he converted, came back. There was a flag, so he did he did his job every time he was asked to do it last night, and the dream continues, and long may it continue. I think regardless of how the roster implications go for the Saints next year, I think there's a really, really good chance that Charlie Smyth has a job in the NFL next year.
Yeah, and you want to enjoy these victories as well, particularly as a kicker, because life, as we know, is so precarious in that position. It's a revolving door. We've seen rock-solid kickers like Younghoe Koo end up out of a job this year. We all obviously spoke at length on the show about what happened to Jude McAtamaney in New York. It can change very, very quickly, so you really got to enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, 100%. It's such a competitive atmosphere, and you could argue that it's even more competitive than positions like quarterback, where there's a second or third string kept on the roster. There's literally one spot on every active roster for a kicker, and so those places are like gold dust. So absolutely enjoy it, and enjoy the moment while it lasts.
Conor, just a quick one on that. It's interesting you say that, because the guy in which he replaced bangs in plenty of field goals for the Colts over the last 2 weeks, and he does that huge one at the end. Unfortunately, they came at the wrong side of it. But you're right, like kickers are moving around team to team, and sometimes a different environment, fresh start for someone else gives them an opportunity with Charlie Smyth, because last year he was rock solid. He had a difficult time for the Saints, and now he's with the Colts. So yeah, it's just in a matter of these kickers. Yeah.
And Brian, the other side of the equation for the game last night is, from a Panthers perspective, they're the team actually chasing the playoff place, and we're hoping to win the NFC South, because there ain't no way out of that division unless you win the division. Nobody from there is going to the wild card, because they just don't have the wins in the W column to get there, and they're not going to get them by the end of the season. That's a real banana skin for them to slip up on. They would have expected much better. And again, and asked the question of them, can they perform away from home in the way they're going to need to? They picked up a morale-boosting win last week outside of their own stadium, but largely it's been, as our guest a couple of weeks ago, Ron Rivera, pointed out, the home show and away no-show for the Panthers, and symptomatic again.
Yeah, usually frustrating for all Panthers fans, Conor, because it didn't seem that way. If you watch large parts of the game, whether it was direct coverage or red zone, it looked like they were pretty dominant for large parts. Just never seemed to put the game away. Had 10-point leads, and even into the fourth quarter, it looked like it was a game that they were going to go on and win. But just something just triggers. It's like the hump they need to get over, and that kind of confidence they have that they can close these games out on their own. It just seems to be lacking at the minute. I don't know whether it's something that's getting inside their head, because it was like Bryce Young had a pretty strong performance. Like, he was really effective when he was getting out on the perimeter, running the ball very well. His rushing yards were used. They were getting the run game going early between Hubbard and the former Cowboys running back, and it just seemed, and McMillan, they were targeting him. So it looked just opportunity to put the game away, stuck for field goals, and then ultimately, you know what the NFL is like in these situations. If you don't put these teams away, you leave them hanging around. Then obviously, like Tyler Shock, in fairness, when we had this conversation last week, I think he's given the Saints a good problem in terms of everyone assumed they'd be in on a quarterback come draft time. But right now, the way he's playing, you have to argue whether he should be the starting quarterback next year, because he's done a great job in terms of these comebacks.
And it's funny, Brian, when you look at the way the Saints are playing at this time of the season, it can go different ways for teams. And a lot of it comes down ultimately to culture and I suppose to the age or the stage that they're at in their development. You see teams just check out when their playoff destiny is determined. Saints are far from that picture. I know it's a divisional game, so there's a little bit more riding on it and there's pride at stake, more so than maybe in some other games. But they don't look like a team that's got one foot on the beach in Cancun. There's players there who look like they're playing for roster spots next season and seem to be quite happy with the way things are going. That looks like a locker room to me that's quite united.
Yeah, and it was significant. Even if you listen to Tyler Shock's interview on the field straight after the game, he was talking about the fact they've won 3 of their last 5 games. Everybody's rallying behind the head coach. They're really enjoying the opportunity to play under Kellen Moore. It doesn't seem like a team that are looking at this, and even look at the games down the stretch. Like they got the Jets next weekend, and with all due respect, they probably feel like that's one they can go win. All of a sudden, it's gone from 1-win team, 2-win team to all of a sudden they're going to 4 or 5 victories potentially, and like they're not going to it's over for them essentially for the season, but they can do damage coming down the stretch. They've already done it in the past week. They beat the Bucs on the road last weekend. They all beat the Panthers this week. But it's probably for next year, isn't it? Like Kellen Moore is kind of proven now he's probably the head coach for this team, and if they can do good things in the off season, they might be back in the sweepstakes challenging come next season.
Kieran, we have seen to our cost on the show this season that Mile High seems to be the place where teams' dreams go to die. We saw what happened, Brian and Kieran, after that incredible turnaround victory when the Broncos came roaring back in the fourth quarter to down the Giants, and everything went down the Swanee for the Giants after that. A really tough loss at the weekend for the Packers in Mile High, having led at halftime and 2 scores up at one stage in the third quarter. Geez, it went downhill very quick and in a disastrous way, losing Watson potentially. Don't know about the severity of the injury there, but certainly Micah Parsons, unfortunately, with that ACL tear, out for the rest of the season, which is a loss not only to the Packers but to the NFL. A tremendous season he's been having, worth every bit of draft capital that was invested in him, the way he's played and what he's done for that defense.
Yeah, look, I'll try and stay objective through this through this segment. But look, it was a great start for the Packers last night. They couldn't have asked for a better start. A turnover straight away. They go down the field, and they seem to be able to move the ball very early and often. The Packers. The only problem was they were getting. Yeah, again, I've said it before. They were coming away with 3-pointers instead of 7. So, they seem to have found a path to success in being able to establish the run and getting the ball out quickly and avoiding that pass rush. And Jordan Love was absolutely cooking in the first half. I mean, he had over 200 yards in the first half and finished with under 3. So just that's indicative of how the tables turned in the second half. And it was that, that standout moment of that Pat Surtain, that awesome interception that was costly in terms of possession for the Packers and in terms of Watson losing.
Can I ask you though, and I'm interested as we talk about that play, and sorry to cut across you, but otherwise I'll forget. Myself and Brian spoke about this briefly earlier today, and be very interested in your take, because you've spoken about Matt LaFleur and his play calling. I'm looking at that drive. Packers are 24-13 up at that point. They've just stopped the Broncos again. They have a 2-possession lead. Even a field goal more than likely salts that game away. But at any cost, you think you're driving down the field slowly. Let's bleed the Broncos. Let's keep them out in the field. Let's run the ball. I do not understand why you were pushing that ball downfield, targeting Pat Surtain, arguably the best cornerback in the NFL, even if he's one-on-one with Watson. It's a very, very risky throw at a time when they, to my mind, did not need a kill shot. I thought it was a poor play call. It's easy to be wise in hindsight. Obviously, you never would have predicted what would have happened to Watson on that play. But the momentum shift occasioned by that risky play was something. It was something LaFleur, something the Broncos didn't need to do, but something or the Packers didn't need to do, but something that for whatever reason Matt LaFleur seemed to feel he needed to do.
I couldn't agree more. I said the exact same thing to Brian Mulligo with a conversation earlier. Take away the Watson injury, even take away the pick. I think the play call was poor because it was a really low percentage. And look, I know that you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Jordan Love hasn't been afraid to push it down the field, and they've had a lot of success.
And to be fair, they killed the Bears with 2 shots to Watson last week, so they can do it. But those, I would argue, were very different points in that game.
Exactly. There's a time and a place, and you take away all the other elements of that play. I think it wasn't the right call. As you said, they were methodical in the first half. They were getting on the front foot with first down. I said to Brian, a 3-4 yard completion on first down would have been lovely there. I know I've been giving out about the jet sweeps, the jet sweeps, and all these kind of razzle dazzle plays are at times in the season, but there is a time for them. The screen passes. That a run up the middle with Jacobs, just get positive yardage on first down. Then you can try and push it down maybe on second down when the field is opened up a little bit more, when they have to stop the run. I think there's been those kind of moments throughout the season, and I know I don't want to get down on Matt LaFleur again when things aren't going well, but they just seem to have these moments where it's just kind of, I don't know, it's like brain freeze or something like that people with half a clue about football like myself are kind of saying, Jesus, it seemed obvious that you shouldn't have done that there. Take away the Watson injury, take away the Parsons injury, I think the momentum was changing at that point anyway. I can't say for sure the Packers would have gone on to win that game, even if they didn't lose their 2 key players. I went to bed last night very very despondent and season over kind of and all that, and woke up today and the Watson injury doesn't seem to be as bad as predicted, as anticipated. Micah Parsons is out for sure, but I mean they had a defense without Micah Parsons the last 2 seasons that went to the playoffs and beat the Cowboys 2 seasons ago. So I mean it's not all isn't lost. I would worry about the Packers secondary going forward, but on the other side of the ball, you have to give credit to Bo Nix, because regardless of whether Parsons was on the field or not, he was picking apart that secondary all night, and he was finding his receivers, and he seemed to be able to get them down the field. He had over 300 yards, and the knock on the Broncos is whether Bo Nix is the guy that can take the offense forward. But he put his hand up last night, and I whatever you say about the Packers and their credentials, I think the Broncos really, maybe even for the first time, silenced a few doubters last night and said, no, we're here and we can make a run at this.
Brian, we've dinged the Broncos. I've dinged the Broncos, and I'll hold my hands up on that one, saying I'm not really sure that offense is really built to do what it needs to do against the best teams in the NFL. But you couldn't complain with the body of work last night. Yeah, they put themselves in a hole, but they got themselves out of it. This wasn't a comeback against one of the bottom feeders in the NFL. This was arguably one of the best teams in the NFL, still a top 5 team, regardless of those injuries in the NFL. And the Broncos offense showed up, and Bo Nix showed up right when they needed him to.
Yeah, I think over the course of the season, Conor, I know we spoke time and time again, it's probably one of the most commonly spoken about things on this show, right, is whether this team are really in a position to really push on come playoff time. But they have been behind in quite a number of games over the course of the season. You reflect on their score charts. Like, there's been games where they've been down for all 3 quarters and still find a way to come out on victories. And I don't think they would have been getting overawed or concerned about the fact they were down. To just jump back to that other point, I think we're talking about why he went downfield with the Packers. I think they felt they had them on the ropes, and that was a dagger type play. If we could put off that play, says we could put them away. But Sean Payton doesn't panic. Yeah, you could say Bo Nix, despite the season that they've had, I wouldn't say he's been criticised, but there's been skeptics whether he really is the man. There's been many conversations around if they would move off him next year, and I think it's a bit disingenuous to have that conversation just yet, because he had a really stellar 4th season, and last night we saw what he can do. Like, as you said, it was Johnny Owiask out there last night, some of the plays in which he was putting out. He was keeping plays alive. He was finding players in coverage. Courtney Sutton had a bigger game than we've seen. That's one I've kind of questioned a couple of times.
Ball placement on that touchdown throw to Troy Franklin. Like, if Aaron Rodgers did that, you'd be saying, wow, who else can fit a ball in a window like that and put it away from the defender in that kind of window? Like, he is, and one of those intriguing players, and you keep looking at him thinking, is he just one of those guys who shows you enough highlights and looks the part and fools you? Does he flatter to deceive? Or is it just waiting to click and then he goes to that next level? We still don't know yet, really. Well,
if this is a second year, if they inevitably, which I believe they will, end up with the 1 seed, in 2 years he's gone from taking the Broncos. Okay, he's part of a whole restructure and reorganization, and they're a great head coach. But they've gone from one of the worst teams in the league and to making the playoffs last year, and now here they are a year later, potentially with the fourth seed. Like, you can see the progress. I think people are going to say Bo Nix they're questioning whether he's a sort of worthy starter in Denver. And within 2 years, he could be the one seed quarterback going into the AFC playoffs. Like,
he could be Denver's version of Jalen Hurts. They'll take the criticism after he wins a Super Bowl.
It's all there for them. Like, and we spoke about it last week, and we were talking about whether we felt they were really worthy of going all the way. But if they get that one seed and they get the bye and they've 2 games in Mile High, would you bet against them? I know we still think maybe Buffalo are the type of team that could go in there, that type of game where it could be, that real high score, expansive game, like similar to what we've seen when the Chiefs and the Bills have played over the last 3 or 4 years. Maybe this is the new rivalry that's coming down the line. We haven't figured it out yet, but it makes for a great postseason ahead, because it's a fresh start for everybody. It looks like there's a lot of quarterbacks that were used to being in the playoffs aren't going to be there this year.
Yeah, speaking of which, Kieran, obviously Patrick Mahomes isn't going to be in the playoffs this year and unfortunately faces a lengthy recovery from injury, the same injury that Micah Parsons suffered with the ACL tear for him. It's a terrible way for the Chiefs' season to end. The Chargers, again, a team that we weren't quite sure about this season, rack up double-digit wins now for the second year in a row. They'll likely head to the playoffs, and they go to Arrowhead and win and put the Chiefs out, eliminate the Chiefs, do the double on the Chiefs over the season. You can't really complain about that.
No, and I said last night that I was listening to you guys last Thursday, even still echoing the sentiment that you just can't write off the Chiefs until they're dead and buried, and now we can sit here and write their obituary for this season at least, because it's a strange one, because I've been the Chargers cheerleader on this show all season, but even I could not see a way that the Chargers won this game last night. The way that they've been struggling to beat the better teams, and the way they've been so decimated, they've even been struggling to get receivers open the last couple of weeks, and yet the Chargers found a way last night. And I think it's an indictment on the Chiefs and just how much they've struggled to get back to what made them the Chiefs all season long. And I guess the toughness and grittiness of the Chargers. I mean, I think they went down 10-0 early on, wasn't it? And they did what they needed to do, which was start to dominate time of possession, start to hold on to the ball for longer. They ran the ball through Hampton and Vidal. Herbert, you'd argue, didn't even get things going really until he really needed it. At the very end. This wasn't a Justin Herbert hero game or anything like that. There was no statistical kind of standout player or anything like that. It was just a really, really gritty win, and you give credit to Harbaugh and the Chargers for getting it done.
A little too gritty at times. A lot of questionable hits in that game.
Yeah, it was spicy. It was very, very spicy. And we talk about Rashee Rice, how he's had a tough couple of weeks, and he was folded up like a deck chair a couple of times. Yeah, it was.
Sam Munson described him as having gotten deleted on that play. Like, he just it's so hard. It's like, oh.
Yeah. There'll be people out there maybe saying there's a little bit of karma attached to that, but I won't get into that. But look, for the Chiefs,
you can log into X to insert your hit and run joke wherever you want.
Yeah, and I just made the point to Kieran. Maybe this is what some of these Chief stars need is a long off season and a reset, because I mean Patrick Mahomes isn't dead and buried. He's not going anywhere in terms of being one of the best and most elite quarterbacks in the league. But they've been on the road right up to January, February now for every season since Mahomes has entered the league, and it had to take its toll at some point. And so maybe a reset at this point is what they need.
Brian, I felt like every bit of the fickle football fan that I am watching that game last night, because we were going back and forth in the WhatsApp group, and we've been on this train for weeks saying, I was so sick of the Chiefs. Like, can they really stay alive and go on a run? And are we going to end up in Santa Clara watching the Chiefs in yet another Super Bowl? As soon as they were out, I was like, oh no Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. Come on.
That's how I feel. That's genuinely how I feel. Like, you think I'm trying to wind people up on the WhatsApp group. I genuinely wanted the Chiefs back in the playoffs. They give you so many great, exciting moments, questionable decisions. Then
we'll end up watching Broncos Patriots in the championship game and going, ugh.
Well, look, let's not go there yet. There's a long way to go. Yes, there's a lot of permutations to unfold over the next few weeks. I just think, look, when you got a quarterback in Mahomes, whether you love him or hate him, he's a fantastic player to watch. And yeah, he hasn't been at the level this year. But in many ways, he's kind of held his team together for large parts of the season. His rushing yards this season are off the charts, kind of compared to previous years, because he's had to take games with a scruff of the neck. And it's a disappointing game because I felt Andy Reid kind of slightly panicked towards the end, because there was still the opportunity when they brought Minshew into the game. They were in field goal range. You went for the big throw. That wasn't necessary. They should have, they needed to get over the line no matter what the scenario was last night. And that was a safety, whether that was a field goal victory, whatever the optics today of winning that game, it didn't matter. And they had the opportunity to get it into overtime. And then who knows from there. The Minshew looked reasonably secure. And then he calls a play, which I just thought was a bit off-putting.
Yeah. Well, we talked about this earlier on in the season, and I think it has finally come to pass where you're making the playoffs, you're going deep in the playoffs, you're going to the Super Bowl 3 years in a row, never mind the championship game appearances in the years when they didn't go to the Super Bowl. Those are truncated off seasons every single season. They're injuries on injuries. It's fatigue and wear and tear sets in. The mental strain of maintaining that focus through those Super Bowl runs, I think it's just taken its toll. Even the great Patriots team, go a couple of fallow years before they reload and recharge and come back again. I don't think the Chiefs are going anywhere, but maybe it's a couple of years before we see them back and they manage to think it up again in a way that's actually going to be effective in an AFC that is experiencing an interesting rise and reconfiguration of the power structure with a bunch of young QB tyros and some new coaching.
Yeah, well, that's the point I was going to make around coaching, Connor, because there is a scenario where, again, speculation is out there and there's going to be different jobs, I imagine, come Black Sunday or Black Monday at the end of the season. But Spagnuolo seems to be a sitting duck at this stage in terms of potentially getting a new job. I know Matt Nagy seems to be back in the kind of the equation for potentially getting another job. He seems to have kind of gone.
Don't do it. Don't do it, teams. The Bears fell into that trap before. No. Don't baggy the Nagy.
He's reinvented himself by all accounts, so let's see who wants to take a chance on him again. But we've seen with the Eagles as well, this season.
Has he reinvented himself as a good coach?
Well, time will tell. Time will tell, Connor, because someone will take a chance on him. If there's a conveyor belt of head coaches, I know you don't agree with it. The reality is we've seen it before. And some of these coaches like McVay, they go and look for McVay's for Andy Reid. They find ways to get themselves back into the limelight in terms of a coaching position. So they may end up losing coaches this year, which maybe puts more pressure on Andy Reid to find a solution there. But there's an interesting offseason because even someone said, that's okay, Mahomes will be back for next season. What's the recovery rate for this particular injury? 7 months? So what's that? That puts him the back end maybe of early training camp when he comes back. There's no assurance he's going to be back 100% straight away. They're going to have to nurture him into the situation. So that's an interesting side. Subplot come July when we're starved of news and we get to see Mahomes out on the field in terms of practice.
Yeah, and a big job for the GM, Brett Veach, there to reconstruct that roster as well. I mean, they're down to the bare bones on the O-line. You couldn't predict the bad luck that they've had with injuries this season, but that certainly hasn't helped. And to your point, ended up putting Mahomes in jeopardy a lot more than they would have liked to. His rushing rate was a lot higher than it has been in previous seasons by necessity and certainly not by design. Kieran, the Bills weren't ready to just cede control of the AFC East to the Patriots just yet. We talked about the Patriots and Mike Vrabel coming off a bye and what a great record he has off a bye. And for a good bit of the first half of this game, it looked like that was the way the script was going to go. The Pats absolutely piling it on the Bills. They're up 21-0. Then Josh Allen decides he has to do something about it.
Yeah, and you mentioned AFC matchups in the playoffs, and I think all of us would take a rematch of this again. This was an excellent entertaining game. 21-0 down. You just look like Mike Vrabel. He's got the Bills number. This isn't going to be a Josh Allen comeback game. And then all of a sudden they just got rolling. They had 5 straight touchdown drives. It wasn't just Josh Allen. Cook had three touchdowns in all. 22 carries, 107 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. I think he'd one through the air as well. It was just full of these. Again, we talk about hero ball, but not just on the Bills side of the ball. I have to say I was hugely impressed by Drake May and what he was able to do last night. I know they fell off in the second half, but there was just a moment where I think it was a Travian Henderson run. He went to the right. He had to cut back, and all of a sudden Drake May was the lead blocker. He went 50 yards, and it was just he just opened up a hole for Travian Henderson and finished it off. So this guy is going to be, I think he's going to be a force in the same vein as Josh Allen for a good few years to come. You look forward to these guys battling it out in the AFC East and in the AFC Conference as well. Just a really entertaining game, and the Bills showed that they're going to be a force in these playoffs. And Josh Allen, he must be thinking to himself, there's no Joe Burrow in the playoffs. There's no Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. There may very well be no Lamar Jackson in the playoffs. This has to be the year where he fancies it.
Brian, we said in the preview show last week that it's either going to be that the Patriots have the perfect plan cooked up yet again to take down the Bills and that Mike Vrabel just owns them, or that Josh Allen comes out and plays with his hair on fire as only he can and takes control of the game. In the event, we saw both of those things happen. Yeah,
usually frustrating game for Patriots fans. I know we were speaking about it briefly this morning. Kind of more than the nature you get yourself 21 and up in a game which everyone assumed the Bills would come out for him because they really needed it. Like, this game didn't strike me as the kind of game the Bills were going to come back in. Now they get a glimmer of light before half time, and obviously the second half was a complete game changer. But Vrabel has done such an immense job there this season, and Kieran's alluding to owning them. I think that's kind of referencing the fact that they went into Buffalo one earlier this season. When you're 21-0 up and you're running the ball so effectively, Drake May is an avenue in the run game as well. You've got the big plays coming off your running backs. It struck me as, okay, this is a serious outfit, which we're talking about. I know Owen Healy's, who's listening to Stephen, kind of tongue-in-cheek saying, the Patriots thought they were back. Well, they are back because they are going to the playoffs, but it's the reality of maybe this levelling out phase you get towards the back end of the season, because now all of a sudden they've gone from a situation where it looks like they may be in the sweepstakes for the 1 seed to going into Baltimore on Sunday Night Football, huge game, and it's going to be a really difficult task for them to go in and win there. If they were to lose that one, then all of a sudden Buffalo are very much back in the mix to win the division, and then all of a sudden you're kind of scrambling you're not necessarily scrambling for a wild card, but you've gone from a situation where it looks like you're locked in to have a home game in the playoffs, tough environment going into Foxborough to potentially going on the road, very different dynamic. So it's a disappointing one because it looked like it was there for the Patriots last night.
Kieran, a game last night in SoFi where we saw the Rams win an absolute shootout with the Lions, another one where two teams just swinging haymakers at each other, talent on display across both sides of the ball, just an epic match, a match that some of us thought might be a rehearsal for the NFC Championship game. Starting to look like the Lions will find it tough to live up to their side of that bargain, but that the Rams looking like they're rounding into the perfect form to be there themselves.
Yeah, this was everything you kind of would have hoped it would be, and in the WhatsApp group, people were saying last night this is the NFC Championship match. I think that all the neutrals would hope for, but it was the Puka Amon-Ra show in the first half. It was just razzle dazzle, spectacular play after spectacular play. Puka, just what an incredible athlete. He had 9 catches for 181 yards last night. Amon-Ra had 13 catches for 164 and 2 touchdowns. And it was just.
I'm going to butcher the stat, but I heard somebody saying last week, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but Puka Nacua has more contested catches than any receiver in history through one season, and we're not even finished the season yet, but on a ridiculously lower number of targets. I think the next closest person had 50 contested targets. Nacua just is unmarkable.
Yeah. No, they were just. He's phenomenal. He's absolutely incredible. Now, how much will they be affected by the loss of Davante Adams? And that's the dark, the bleak point of this game, or the shadow that's cast over this game. How much has last night cost them? Because Davante Adams has been spectacular, and we talked about Micah Parsons. Look, as just a football fan, Brian, you talk about wanting the Chiefs in the playoffs, but you want the best players from every team to be in the playoffs, and you don't want any team to be losing their stars. You didn't want to see an Aiden Hutchinson go down for Detroit last year. It's just not what you pay to see. And you just really, really hope that the outlook isn't as bad as it looked last night. It looked like it was a non-contact injury, wasn't it? Was it a hamstring or a knee?
He tweaked the hamstring injury that he had already, so the prognosis is not great. Looks like he's out at least 1 week. Okay,
well, even if it's just 1 week, look, they'll be even if it costs them the 1 seed at worst, and they still end up in the playoffs, that they're still a team that you just want to see them at full strength. But the game itself, it started out perfectly for the Lions. That Hutchinson grab and return for a touchdown. The interception was a great start for the Lions, and you thought, okay.
He didn't quite get there, and I was just going to credit.
Oh, sorry, he was caught.
Colby Parkinson, the tight end, caught him and took they ended up punching it in the end. But I remember thinking that's one of those ones that the football gods smile kindly on, and surely Colby Parkinson gets a touchdown then later on the other side. It's one where you like to see a guy hustle like that.
Speak of you talk about American football, but Gaelic football. If anybody saw Aidan Hutchinson's hands to catch that ball as it was flying, it was it was as sure-handed an interception as you see. 2 hands on the ball, it was absolutely perfect. But no, the Rams they flipped the script. They got on top, and it was Puka Nacua and again Devontae Adams at 70 yards as well. Kyron Williams, the run game. They're just one of the most balanced. Close to perfect teams that there is in the league at the moment, and that within the NFC. But it's you'd say within the NFC they're the cream of the crop, but they're so closely matched by the other 2 teams in their division. So it's again we're talking about the run in for the NFC North, but the NFC West is going to be lights out for the rest of the season as well.
For the Lions, Brian, they pretty much need to run the schedule to get in, because to the point that Kieran just made, you look at the NFC West, and this also applies to both the Packers and the Bears potentially, whoever loses out on winning that division in the North. Seahawks on 11 wins, Rams on 11 wins, 49ers on 10 wins. If you're going to make the playoffs in the NFC and you don't win your division, you're probably going to need 11 wins at a minimum to get in.
Yeah, what have the Lions got left? They've got Steelers at home, winnable.
Vikings and then Bears.
Vikings Christmas Day on the road, winnable, bearing in mind the Vikings struggles this season, but they'd love to, I suppose, knock out one of their rivals. And I think it may come down to that scenario again, which you probably don't want, Connor, which is like you want the Lions out of the picture, or certainly the Bears, locked in and in the playoffs, and then they can do damage in terms of ending the Lions season. But the Lions, for some reason this season, it just doesn't seem to be clicking. And it's a bit unusual to say that because they came out so hot last night, and offensively they were really good. And you could argue they were going up against one of the stellar teams in the league, so of course they're going to give up points. But defensively this year, they just haven't at the same level. I know Kieran on the instant reaction was alluding to the fact that they're being plagued with injuries, in particular the secondary. And when you're down 3 or 4 players, you can get away with one cornerback out of the team, but when you're missing 3 or 4, you're in a really kind of difficult spot. And fortunately, that's where it's been. And I just don't think Dan Campbell this year, I'm not saying he hasn't coached well, but something just seems amiss with this team this year. Like, there's been games this year, it just hasn't made sense in terms of the play calling. I know he's like 4th down and we speak about that continuously, but just, I don't know, it just hasn't clicked. And maybe it will click in the back end of the season. Maybe these weird notions that we have are what you obviously did with the America game, where we're talking about these moments in the season when things change, but it doesn't feel like that's coming for this Lions team this year.
No, I agree. It feels like last season was their moment, and they might have missed the window for now. But I think they're too talented not to be back, as we were saying about the Chiefs. And also, I think kind of like we saw the Eagles after their Super Bowl year when they lost Steichen and Gannon. It's tough to replace your top coordinators, Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson, who got you there in the first place and who got head coaching jobs. That's not something that's necessarily easy to do in one season's time. Maybe we thought that they had overcome that loss to a much greater degree than they actually have, and it might be coming back to haunt them a little bit now. We'll take a quick break before we discuss Jags.